Our topic for today is the impact of the new media on social identities and interpersonal relationships. So, we're talking about how the new media, how the internet, how social media websites they impact our social identities and our interpersonal relationships. So there are two factors that we'll be taking into account today. Number one, we talk about the impact that the new media has on social identities. Number two, we talk about the impact that this internet or these social media websites have on our interpersonal relationships. Before we get started, I'm sure everyone sitting over here would agree that the growth of hyperconnectivity has led to an impact on people's social lives. For this, it is pretty important that we understand what the term hyperconnectivity means. Hyperconnectivity is a state when we're connected almost always, the state of being constantly connected to others through the internet. We all use WhatsApp, we all use a cellular phone, we all use the new media. There are various digital platforms that we use. One of them is a messenger. Another I know of is WhatsApp. I mean, there are various platforms that we use through our cellular phones, through our mobile phones, which keep us almost always connected with others. So the growth of hyperconnectivity has led to an impact on people's life. Now, has it been a good impact or has it been a bad impact is something that we'd be discussing later on in this lesson. But I'm sure no one sitting over here would disagree to the point that this growth of hyperconnectivity, a state of being connected to others always, has had a significant amount of impact on our lives. Now, before we proceed, if I remind you of the topic that we're doing today is the impact of the new media on social identities and interpersonal relationships. It is pretty important that we understand what sort of social identities are we referring to. Now, when we talk about a social identity, we need to understand the distinction between objective social identity and subjective social identity. When we use the word objective social identity has to do with the characteristics that we hold or the similarities that we have with each other, the similarities that we share with other people. For instance, similarities in terms of gender, for instance, similarities in terms of ethnicity. And based on these similarities or based on these characteristics, how is it that people around us see us? Now, for instance, if I say I'm a male, now me being a male, how is it that the society would see me is my objective social identity. Now, I hold a Pakistani nationality. Me holding a Pakistani nationality, to what extent does this have an impact of the image that I carry on other people? Now, this was an example of objective social identity. Now that we know what objective social identity is, let's move on and discuss subjective social identity. Subjective social identity is how we see ourselves belonging to a particular group. Now, me being a male, how do I see myself? Me being a Pakistani, how do I see myself is my subjective social identity. Having said that, if we talk about the next term that the another term that we had in our title, the title of this topic, it is interpersonal relationships. What does the word interpersonal relationships over here mean? The relationships we have with others, both, I mean, these relationships could be face-to-face relationships, these relationships could be online relationships, the relationships we hold with our family members, with our friends, with our acquaintances, with our colleagues, with strangers, so on and so forth. Now, taking this a little further, let's divide this discussion into two broad categories. Initially, we'd speak about the digital optimist view, and then we'd move on and discuss the digital pessimist view. When we talk about the digital optimist view, according to digital optimists, this digital revolution has opened up the chance to try out and take on an infinite range of different identities. They are This, of course, is in line with postmodernism, how postmodernists believe that today in this contemporary society, the amount of choice that we all have has been a lot more than we've ever had. So, in this day and age, because of this digital revolution, we have an opportunity, we have choice, or rather say, we have a chance to try out and take on an infinite range of different identities. There are different range of identities that we can choose, and this postmodernist era has given us this opportunity. Now, taking this ahead, if we speak about Professor Tusha Rajendran's study. Now, Professor Rajendran is a professor of developmental psychology at Heriot-Watt University. According to him, technology today can help take us beyond who society tells us we are, who we are. Now, this is very important. Understand this. Let's read this and understand this again. Technology today can help take us beyond who society tells us who we are. So, according to Rajendran, because of technological advancement, this society because of technological advancement, we have moved beyond the point where the society is going to dictate us who we are or what our social identities are like. So, taking this ahead, if I give you a couple of examples over here, the new media has provided opportunities such as Second Life. Now, what is Second Life? Second Life is a virtual space. Second Life is a virtual space where individuals, they create avatars, they develop identities, they interact with others, and they explore social identities. It's a virtual space that we're talking about. It's a world that we're talking about over here. So, yeah, Second Life, where users can create avatars, develop identities, interact, and explore new social identities. It has become an example of a digital space that lets individuals experiment with social identities and self expression. So, we're talking about a social virtual platform. We're talking about a digital space. We're talking about a digital world that allows individuals to experiment their identities. Taking this ahead, individuals experiment with social identities and self-expression. This virtual world represents digital optimism by offering a platform where people can shape different versions of themselves and connect with others in creative manners. So, this is an opportunity, according to Rajendran. This is an opportunity that we have today that we never did have back in the past. And this is all possible because of this digital revolution. This is all possible because of the expansion or because of this constant technological advancement. Now, having said that, if I take this a little further, according to Rajendran, the new media has had a liberating effect for those who feel trapped in the wrong body. Now, at this point, Rajendran is referring to transgenders and the opportunity transgenders have today, which they did not have back in the past. With the growth that internet has had today, people have started embracing gender fluidity. Of course, we need to understand this. This is something that is acceptable more in the western part of the world than our country, than South Asian countries. But people today who used to feel constrained by binary notions of sex, they have this opportunity through the internet. They have this opportunity through the new media to experiment different identities, to experiment their different gender identities as well as sexual identities. Similarly, people who are attracted to the same sex, for instance, if you talk about homosexual individuals, they today do not really have to. I mean, it's an opportunity for them as well, according to Rajendran. Now, like I had said, this is something that is more popular. This is something that is acceptable, not in our part of the world, but yes, there are countries out in the West who have embraced this opportunity. Now, taking this ahead, if we move on and we speak about another reference here, if we talk about Fulvia Castellecchi, digital revolution has massively expanded people's range of potential contacts. Now, there are different websites, like different platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. This has helped people network better. This has given you an opportunity to expand your potential contacts, be it in terms of your profession, be it in terms of you trying to track an existing acquaintance. Let's just say someone you studied with now 20 years, 30 years from today. Sorry, someone with someone whom you studied with, let's just say 15 years back when you were younger and you were in kindergarten. You today have an opportunity through this new media platforms. You could contact or you could get in touch with that person again. Likewise, the internet has provided an opportunity, the growth of new media has provided an opportunity for individuals to connect with like-minded people, beyond geographical restrictions. You could, you could connect through different applications, like I said, WhatsApp, like I said, Instagram, like I said, there are different messengers, and this has a good thing to it as well, because the people who used to fear being socially isolated, or people who were not confident enough, or the people who were the shy sorts, now today they have an opportunity to be able to express themselves better, which of course would help them, which of course would help them uh, not suffer through social isolation. And the people who struggle with face to face interactions, or the people who struggle with shyness, the internet has provided them with a great opportunity to network. The internet has provided them with a great opportunity to connect to people while while not having to interact with them face to face. Now, these were 2 points that we discussed. These were two, or rather say two sociological thinkers that we spoke about, two key thinkers. Now, if we quickly move on to the digital pessimist view here, if we talk about the digital pessimist view, the digital pessimists, they believe that the internet is, or the growth in new media is, has provided people with newer opportunities to misrepresent their identities. So, as it has its goods, according to the digital pessimist view, individuals today have an opportunity to misrepresent their identities online as well, and this could consequently have very detrimental, very harmful effects for those individuals in specific, and the society by large. Idealized portrayals, the second point, idealized portrayals of people's lives on social media platforms generate feelings of inadequacy or envy amongst others. Your generation knows this, understands this better than I do. The way individuals portray their lives on these social media platforms doesn't really, in most cases, I'd not say all, in most cases, is not a true representation of who they are, is not a true representation of how their life actually is like. And this causes, for the people who do not really have this opportunity, this causes discomfort for them. Not only discomfort, this has led to a growth in psychological problems that individuals have faced when they feel that their lives aren't as good as others, when they generate, because platforms they have these platforms these platforms, I can't think of a word, I'm too exhausted right now, but these platforms, they generate feelings of inadequacy or envy amongst individuals as well. The third point, people today devote so much time on online platforms that they neglect their real relationships. Now, if I talk about a family, individuals at home, even when they're in front of each other, if I talk about a typical family in a living room, if there's a couple and they have a few children with them, you'd see almost everyone occupied with one gadget or the other. Don't you think the amount of time people are spending today on these platforms is taking a toll on their real relationships, on the people they would have otherwise spent time with? This again does affect your interpersonal relationships. The next point, the addictive nature of online communication has had a harmful psychological impact as well. People are more concerned about the likes that they have on whatever they post. People are more concerned. People compare. Compare. Like I said, your generation understands this better than I do. The need to check the number of likes or the responses that you've had on your latest post on Instagram or Facebook, this may lead to marginalizing their immediate relationships, which again is which again is a drawback of the new media, which again is a limitation, which again is something that is consequently having a detrimental effect on the social identities people hold, on the interpersonal relationships people have had. The next point, growth in new media has opened up a new arena of ills within a society. Misogynists, for instance, they now have a larger audience. I mean, the hate that individuals show towards a particular social group, the growth of internet has given them more of an opportunity now. They have, I mean, they can do it to more people as compared to them being able to show what they feel to individuals in real interactions. So internet has provided not only internet has provided, or the growth of new media has provided them with an opportunity to do what they like doing on a bigger platform, which again has a detrimental effect on the society as well. Now, if we try evaluating this before we proceed, the new media is relatively new. Let's not react to this real quick. The new media relatively is new. If we talk about World Wide Web, it has been around 30-35 years at max. If we talk about social media websites, they've been here for around, I don't think, for more than 2 decades. So this is something that is new, and we cannot just hold very concrete and rigid opinions about the impact that the new media has had on our social identities that soon. Now, let's quickly move on and have a look at some preliminary conclusions that we can draw from here. People today can experiment with alternative online virtual identities and can engage in what Irving Goffman called the presentation of self or impression management in creative ways online. Now, Irving Goffman, you must have studied about Irving Goffman when you were in AS as well. And as we speak about the idea of the presentation of self put forward by Irving Goffman, the idea is that individuals choose to present a particular image. They choose to present a desirable image. They want to show the world, they want the world to see them in a particular manner. When we use the word impression management over here, we're talking about the efforts people put to control how other people see them. Now, the way your generation more so posts things on the internet, you are trying to, most of you, I'm not say all, they try to manage their impression. They try to make sure that the world sees them in a particular manner. So people can experiment with alternative online virtual identities, and they can also engage in what government called the presentation of self or impression management in creative ways online. One. Number two, Rajendran's suggestion overlooks the fact that social identities are not simply chosen. Now, let me elaborate on this second point over here. According to Rajendran, if I may show this to you again, see, technology can help us beyond who society tells us we are. Now, if I may give you an example over here, if you talk about an individual from an ethnic minority background, if you're talking about an individual from an ethnic minority background, don't you think, despite of how that ethnic minority individual in a particular society portrays himself or herself online, when it comes to real world interactions, the racism, the bullying that they might the racism or the bullying that they might encounter in real world, real life interactions, their online identities might not be able to help them through them. So you can just pretend being someone else for a while, but then when you step into the real world, there are certain social constraints. There are, I mean, you can sprinkle, you could bring in the structuralist perspective over here. We cannot ignore the significance. We cannot ignore the fact that the social structures that still persist in our society today, they have a long lasting impact. They have a profound impact on us, on our social identities. Now, taking this ahead, the next point, internet helps individuals acquire vast amount of information online relating to identity as well. Now, this could be seen in a good manner and in a bad manner, both, because the internet is full of information. There's good information, there's bad information. It all has to do with the way you consume that information. So, for the people who want to acquire or who want to know more about their identities or who want to discover themselves, the internet provides them with an amazing opportunity to do so. Taking this ahead, identities, this is a negative point that I'm highlight over here. Identities can be manipulated online in a negative manner too. Now, when we talk about identities being manipulated in a negative manner, if we speak about IS or ISIS, they have sought to radicalize Muslim youngsters in Britain by implying that they cannot be Muslim and British both. This radicalization, this misrepresentation, let me repeat, misrepresentation of Islam by certain groups has led to the distortion of identities, this manipulation of identities by some people. Again, they're able to do so without them being caught because of internet, which is a limitation, or which is again a drawback of the usage of internet and social media platforms. Now, taking this ahead, if we speak about social media use and interpersonal relationships over here, according to Livingstone et al. And this study in 2012. So, this was a part of their research. This was a part of their report on parenting for a digital future. They report certain challenges that the digital pessimists view, that digital media are separating members and diverting them from traditional shared activities. The report is based on a large scale social survey. There were 2,032 UK parents of children whose age was between 0 to 17 years in late 2017. They argue that the digital media brings families together and that watching television and movies and playing video games together are now deeply integrated into family life. Moreover, they also argue that parents are working hard to enable children's online opportunities and address the risks at the same time as well. So, at this point, we are talking about at this point, we're talking about how the social media, according to Livingstone et al., how the social media is separating family members and diverting them from traditional shared activities. At one point, we can say that you're getting diverted from the traditional. The focus over here is on the word traditional shared activities. However, at the same time, there are certain activities such as watching movies together, playing video games together. I mean, if you have a sibling who's studying in the States, United States of America, you could sit over here in Pakistan and play an online game with your sibling. Don't you think this would bring families together? There are various other platforms where you could watch movies together as well. The third point, parents saw compulsive social media usage and cyberbullying dangerous as well. So, amongst the risks the parents had in mind were compulsive social media use and cyberbullying, both of which have been researched on intensively. So, one sociological thinker that we spoke about, if we take this ahead and talk about another study that was carried out, another research that was conducted in Hungary, and it was a large scale social survey of nearly 6,000 adolescents in Hungary. Let me repeat, a large scale social survey of nearly 6,000 adolescents in Hungary. I think I just write it down. That would a large scale social survey of nearly 6,000 adolescents in Hungary. Now, from this sample, what Banyai et al. In 2017 concluded was that 4.5% of the adolescents that they researched on belonged to an at risk group. So, it was a huge sample of around 6,000 adolescents in Hungary. And out of these 6,000 adolescents, 4.5 of the adolescents belonged to an at risk group and reported low self esteem, depressive symptoms, and elevated social media use. So, we're talking about a correlation, we're talking about a relationship between social media usage and individuals, specifically adolescents, them reporting low self esteem, them reporting depressive symptoms. And these adolescents were mainly females. These were females who were spending around more than 30 hours per week, either on the internet, on social media. So, this is another concerning finding from this research that was conducted in 2017 on a large scale, based on a large scale social survey in Hungary. Number three, Alex Hearn. According to Alex Cern, the risk of social media addiction is not an unfortunate, unintended byproduct of social media use. Understand this. According to Alex Hearn, in the year 2018, the risk of social media addiction is not an unfortunate, unintended byproduct of social media use. But this is something that has been deliberately done. That this is something that has been intentionally done. This is a deliberate, this is a deliberate attempt by these social media platform designers, so that individuals who use them, they every once in a while they have that dopamine effect. They every once in a while feel like their life misses social validation, and due to this they end up, or because of this they end up spending as much time as possible on their platforms. Understand this: the more time you spend on these social media platforms, the more money these social media websites and applications make. So, according to Alex Cern, designers of social media platforms intentionally ensure that users spend as much time as possible on their platforms. And this is a deliberate dopamine hit that they feel every individual should get every once in a while. This is a deliberate attempt by them so that an individual feels like they're trapped in a social validation feedback loop. Now, taking this ahead, the last key thinker for today. Over here, we speak about City Chai et al. And if we speak about this study by City Chai et al., they claim that perpetrators can block or hide their identity. Now, if you talk about someone who's into cyberbullying, if you talk about a misogynist, if you talk about a pedophile, they can actually hide their identities. And this is what makes it even more dangerous. The content used to harass the victim can be spread or shared widely as well, because there's no limitation, and this can remain accessible indefinitely. So, this raises the concerns related to the new media even more. Perpetrators can go about doing whatever they want to do. At the same time, if they're tech savvy, they can end up hiding their identity. They can have a negative impact. They could be dangerous to people, and at the same time stay anonymous, which makes it even more dangerous. So let's conclude this. It is still an open question whether the digital optimist or digital pessimist view hold more value. Ultimately, the impact of new media depends on how it is used and how it is regulated. And this needs to be balanced. The potential benefits, the potential risks need to be looked into, and keeping them in mind, the social media needs to be, or the new media needs to be used. Now, I hope this has given you all a bit of an understanding on the impact of social media on an individual's social identity, as well as their interpersonal relationship. So I'm a little too exhausted today, hence the stuttering. I hope you all understand, and I hope all of this helped.